What's going on, everyone? I'm gonna give it a couple minutes for everyone to join. Where's everyone coming in from? Got quite a few people joining today. Hey guys, also just a reminder, if lots of people all over the country, hopefully it's not -10 like it is here. If you guys have closers or dispo managers or anyone else on the team, you're welcome to bring them on here. They might have to register. I don't really know how the process works. My team can drop a registration link if you guys want. Um, but they're welcome to join. Nice and sunny. I'm jealous. Let's see, where's oh, Hawaii. What's it like in Hawaii right now? Right down the street. What's going on, Nate? Cleveland, 70 and when the week is closing tomorrow. Nice. Jealous. Of course, everyone's getting on here from warm areas. All right, guys. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right, Josh, can you see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up. I see you there. There's folks still joining. Let me give it a couple more seconds. I saw some more folks joining. All right. I'm back. Man, lots of Texas people. Yes, I'm feeling way better. I honestly thought I was on my deathbed for the last 2 weeks. If you didn't know, I was like in the ER, dying. I'm also a baby when I'm sick. All right, guys. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and get what's going on, Tal. Send me some funny memes. I need some funny memes in my life. All right. Well, welcome to today. Today is all around running comps and underwriting. And before we even get started today, for all of you guys that have ever been on a training with me, I want to make sure we have our feet on the ground. We are going to be talking lots of numbers today and like running comps, coming up with ARVs, Mayos, repair estimates. But I think we can all agree that real estate has a lot of risk. You can lose money. I'm not here to like promise you're gonna make money or make a bunch of money by tomorrow. So can we all just go to the chat and say yes, that we all know it takes action, consistency, hard work, guidance before we get started today. I'd really appreciate it. Awesome. Appreciate it. Look at that. Everyone's like on fire today. Okay. So I know that I see a lot of names that I actually know in here. But for those of you that don't know us that happen to join off of like my social media or something, I'm gonna do like a 3-minute spiel on who Josh and I are, just so you know who you're learning from today. We own Heels Homes here locally in Columbus, Ohio. We go deep into Columbus and Toledo, Ohio. So what do I mean by that? We don't go like nationwide or anything like that. I'm a big believer that you should go deep into your backyard. You can do more exit strategies, monetize every lead that way, etc. And so we flip wholesale, have a rental portfolio, we private lend at scale, etc. We have a very lean team doing millions of dollars in revenue. We do anywhere from like 15 to 23 contracts a month. Right now, this is what our org chart looks like. Josh, my husband and business partner, is on here. He's the COO. Sage is our sales manager. He leads both my dispo and acquisitions team. So we have a couple closers, a dispo manager. We physically sit here in Columbus, Ohio, but we do everything virtual. So we don't go to in-person appointments. We do all repair estimates through the phone. And so for those of you that might be on here that do in-person appointments, who, especially flippers who are like, I don't understand how you build a scope of work without going to the property. Today, you're going to learn how. And so you're going to see, how does our team get trained to run legitimate actual repair estimates through a phone sales conversation, and then running the right comparables. Also, Results Driven, if you guys don't know who Results Driven is, it is our education company. We have been helping, I don't know, 10,000 plus people across the country for 6+ years now install the same operating systems that Josh and I have over the last decade. And guys, the one big difference between like Results Driven and a lot of other programs is that most programs, when you got into real estate, they teach you how to do deals, right? We don't teach you how to do a deal. We teach you how to build a business that does deals repeatably. And they're two totally different skill sets. And we're not a mastermind. We're a hands-on coaching program. We're in the business with you. We do custom hand holding. So we're not, like some of our masterminds and our peers out there. We're very much an in the business coaching program. And again, like we're here to build a business out of this. So again, if you have a team or you're looking to hire a team, the training you're going to have today is the same way we're training our team. And so what we're going to do, hey team, do you mind dropping the link? You guys should all get a link to a Google Drive today. We do have a school community. So if you haven't added yourself to school or you're not in our community, please add yourself to our school community. We will put all of these resources in school soon. But right now I'm just going to drop a Google Drive link for you guys so that you can bring it up as we go through it all. Guys, can you drop the link? I'm going to wait for you guys to drop the link, please. Thank you. All right. So also, guys, we've got lots of students already on here. Shout out, say hi if you're already one of our core students in the program or you've been into one of our 4-week programs. Just say boom in the chat. Hello, because not everyone in here has been in any of our trainings. We have students, guys, from the East Coast to the West Coast, North to the South, one-man shows to, people doing 50 deals a month. So we're here to just get you to where you guys want to go. Look at that. All my booms. What's going on? Carrie, Brandy, Dino, lots of students in here. Also, we have a 4-week program. It's only $27. It's called the REI Business Accelerator. This is where we literally clean up all the systems and processes on the front end of your company. Then we go into a workshop, which a lot of you guys on here have already been to. This is where we help you really build out the organization and amplify your deal flow with infrastructure, because too many people out there are operating like complete fly-by-night operations. You could get away with that in 2021, 2022, all those years, but you can't get away with that today. I can promise you that. And then we have a one-on-one coaching program where we handhold you. So let's get into today. I just wanted to give you a quick spiel of who we are so that we can dive into today's boot camp. What are you going to leave with today? What I'm seeing across the industry, and I feel like people are afraid to talk about it, is that I think, especially if you've been in the game long enough, in 2021, 22, 23, these years, you could make tons of mistakes and make money on deals. Okay. You can't do that today. And one wrong mistake on underwriting or not understanding repairs or scope of works, especially if you're a wholesaler who's never flipped, is probably hurting you right now. You probably have higher contracts falling out. If you're a flipper, my guess is you're suffering with longer days on market. So today we want to show you how are we underwriting differently in today's market. We're going to walk you through that process, the tools we use. We're going to give you guys all the checklist that's in the drive. So team, please drop the link again in case someone didn't see it. And we're going to walk you through how are we running comps today versus a few years ago. Okay. And then again, houses are taking a lot longer to sell right now. I think we're all feeling the pain of that. We're personally seeing that sellers are making more price reductions than ever. Buyers are requesting crazy remedy requests now, so it's making our spreads thinner. So not only do we have more remedy requests, we have longer hold times, more expensive money. All of these things are hurting flippers in the market. Okay. And if you're only a wholesaler, guess who your client is? It's the flipper. So we've got to underwrite differently to provide them the house at the cost in which they need it in today's market, not yesterday's market. And what's happening is if we make one bad assumption in the underwriting process and we don't adjust to how things are happening today and understanding how to look at trends, it will literally go from making money to drastically bleeding and losing money. Okay, we're seeing it across the country. And guys, we have thousands of people in our community. We coach hundreds of people one-on-one in our programs. We see it all in every market. Okay. And so we want to make sure that today we provided an outlet for you guys to understand how should we be underwriting. So today we're going to go over what we call the major components of a house and how do we then put repair estimates to those. How do we spot outdated components? How do we know what the repairs will be based on the comps? And by the way, we're going to show you what tools we use because we did a survey in our own community recently of who the hell is still using like Zillow and all these retail based platforms to comp deals. Guys, you should not be using Zillow. Okay. We use a product called Property Machine. I know that they have, Josh will be going over it later. Property Machine does like a 7-day free trial, I believe. So if you go to their website, if I were you and you want to follow along today, you can do the trial if you want. And we'll talk you through why do we use Property Machine versus the MLS now, because Property Machine also has access to the MLS and cash transactions. So our team months ago switched to using Property Machine for everything. And then we're going to determine what work needs done to the property, a line by line item repair estimate Josh is going to go through, and then how do we calculate our offer, and we're going to do some live comping at the end. And so like ultimately, guys, these are the facts. This is the entire country month by month of the median days on market. So as you can see, since May of last year, we've done nothing but skyrocket to the right on days sitting on the market, which means there's more price reductions, there's more deals falling out, more fall throughs, more remedy requests, etc. And it's putting price pressure on the entire country. Okay. And so in addition, if you see these were the median listing prices across the country, you can see a drastic drop in the last 6 months. So if you guys don't start adapting to how deals get done today, like this right here, I bet you anything, all these fly-by-night operators who aren't installing infrastructure, this right here is going to bankrupt people in the industry. Okay. And so what is causing the shift, right? Obviously, affordability. Payments are still high. Interest rates really have not gone down enough to be affordable. Who knows if they're even going to go down, because JP Morgan Chase came out this last week saying that they're not. Inventory has skyrocketed, which means more competition, more remedies, which means that you might have to put more detail into your rehabs where before we didn't have to. Okay. So there's less urgency on the buyer side. There's more inspection demands. Like all these things are working against us. So it's more important than ever to make sure that you have the skill set to underwrite properly. So again, what this means is we've got to get really good at the underwriting side. So I'm going to pass the baton to Josh, and he's going to start diving into underwriting. And please ask us any questions as you go. Hey, team, will you do me a favor? Because people are joining, coming and going, can you please drop the Google Drive link again so everyone has the tools and resources as we go through this?
Awesome. Thank you, Tiff. And just so everyone is aware, there's a specific order that we're going to go through here today, like Tiff mentioned. And the first thing that we're going to start with is understanding all of the components that make up the anatomy of a house. When we understand that and we understand what questions we need to be asking or the information we need to be gathering on the front end, then we're going to take that, then look at how we're running comps now, because it's changed. It's very specific, okay? We're going to show you the tool we're using for that and the exact methodology that we're following. Then when we understand what our comps are, which is going to help us pin our ARV, then we're going to put together a repair estimate, and then we're going to back into our offer. So we're going to talk about how we calculate our offer. All of that is going to go in that specific order. Everything starts with understanding this anatomy of a house. And in fact, the reason why this is so important is because when we understand the components, we understand the questions to ask, and when we understand the questions to ask, we are then able to determine our repair estimate. So these are the things that make up of a house. The foundation, we have electrical items, we have plumbing, we have HVAC, roof, windows, siding, our kitchens, our bathrooms, and our flooring. So now the key is, how do we understand, or at what point do we start to account for replacing a kitchen versus not replacing a kitchen? At what point do we account for replacing a electric panel versus not replacing it? That's what we're going to talk about here today. And the first component we're focusing on here is the foundation. And as you can see here, these are the types of foundations that we have in our market. Obviously, if you're in Florida, for example, you probably don't have basements there. So there's full basements here in the markets that we invest in. There's slab on grades, and then there's also crawl spaces. And the way in which we're able to identify potential problems are things like this. You can see this photo right here. This is a horizontal crack, or even if there's vertical cracks. The horizontal and stair step cracks indicate that the wall is bowing. And the remedy for a bowing wall is what you see over here, either steel I-beams or carbon fiber straps. Just a quick note for anyone here, if you're rehabbing, um, we use Rhino straps, so you can look them up. Rhino straps, they come with pre-engineered drawings, and your whoever's doing your construction could go to them and become a certified installer. Okay, so these cost us, I want to say, 375 per strap is what we pay. Back before COVID, before a lot of the inflation that we've experienced here over the last 5 or 6 years, these steel I-beams were $500 at that point in time. So just to put that into perspective, and we also, with our installer, we get a transferable warranty that we're able to give our buyers as well. So I would highly recommend you look up Rhino straps, if that's something that, if you guys are taking on projects like that. Now, the next item here is going to be the electrical components, and the things that's important when it comes to electric is we need to understand if it's a two-wire system versus a three-wire system.
Hey, Josh,
Yeah,
just want to slow you down a little bit because not everyone in here understands all these things. So just slow it down a
we
little
got a
bit.
lot to cover, Tiff, and not a lot of time to
All
cover
right,
it.
all right,
I'll do my best.
all right.
As you guys, in fact, I'll pull up the chat just to make sure everybody's good here. All right. So when it comes to electrical items, the biggest thing that we want to make sure we understand is the house, does it have knob and tube or not? And to put this into perspective, our buy box specifically is 1940 build or newer. And the reason why we do that is because around 1938, 1939 is when they transition from knob and tube to a more updated, obviously not the most up to date in today's era, but a more updated electrical system. And we don't want to take on houses where we've got to gut it to the studs and rip all the knob and tube out. We don't want to deal with any of that. So that's why our buy box is that cutoff. And I bring that up just so you're aware, if you're ever looking at an older house that's built before 1940, it probably has knob and tube unless it was renovated since then. So that's an important note. Now, from 1940 until about I want to say it was like 1978 or sometime in the 70s or maybe even early 80s. There were what they call a two-wire system, okay, and in those two-wire systems there was a positive and a neutral wire. And then when they transitioned over to a three-wire system, they added a ground. So if you think of an outlet, for example, a two-prong outlet has two wires, the positive and the neutral. Now that third wire that is at the bottom, that is the ground wire. And so we need to also understand if it's a two-wire system, a lot of buyers are asking for, like Tiff mentioned, a lot of buyers are not as shy to ask for more and more remedies these days because they have a lot more options. It's shifting more to a buyer's market. So if there's a two-wire system, buyers are asking for all the outlets to be grounded. We've got to be aware of these things because that could be a $2,500, that could be a $3,500 item depending upon how big the house is. So the the reason why these things matter is because we have to understand when we get to the end of this transaction, right? Whether you're wholesaling it to a rehabber or you're a rehabber you're rehabbing it and you're going to sell it to a retail buyer, at some point there will be a home inspector that walks through the property. And the thing with these home inspectors is that I'll just explain what has happened to us here in Central Ohio. Not until I believe it was 2019, you didn't have to be licensed to be a home inspector. All you needed was a name on a card, and you were automatically up for hire to go inspect houses. Well, what you get when it comes to that is things like this. We had a house that was built in 1996, so obviously the major components were a lot newer than like a 1900. And the home inspector goes through the house. At that time, this was back in 2018, we had an offer that was $10,000 over our list price, which was it was not as common in 2018 as it was in 2020, 21, or even 22, or even 23 and parts of 24. And so that was a massive win for us. But during the home inspection, the home inspector popped the panel cover off, and they called out one breaker that looked like it was double tapped, meaning that there were two circuits that were inserted into one breaker. And so they called this out as a fire hazard, said the house could blow up at any point in time, and as you would expect, that buyer went running for the hills. They're like, forget this. I don't want to deal with a hazard like that. And so we lost that buyer, had to go back on the market. We still did well on the deal, but the point is that I lost that opportunity because I didn't understand this component and how these conversations are with these inspectors and the home buyers. Here's another example. Anyways, I hired a licensed electrician to go into that property, who then evaluated the double tap, and it was actually a breaker that was designed for two loads, so there were no issues. I lost that buyer because the inspector didn't know what the heck they were looking at, unfortunately. So these are the things that we just have to account for. Another thing that has happened to us when we were buying our primary residence, this was back in 2020, our most recent purchase. Um, Luckily Tiff and I are in the industry, and we had a good inspector. The home inspector goes through the house, and they break down everything with us after the inspection, and they looked at us and said, "Hey, your heat pump and your condenser, which is our furnace and air conditioning, they're 9 years old, and the manufacturer's life expectancy is 10 years." So this conversation could go one of two ways. This home inspector could look at us and say, "You're going to have to budget for $25,000 to replace both of these units within the next 12 months." That's a lot for a first time or second time home buyer to make that kind of investment after putting down 5, 10, 15, or even 20% to purchase the property to begin with. So luckily, that's not what our home inspector said. Our home inspector said, "I've seen these units last 25, 30, sometimes even 40 years. I think you're good." Again, two totally different conversations depending upon the home inspector and what they're seeing. So with that being said, this is why we want to understand these major components to make sure that we are accounting for these types of opportunities. In fact, guys, go to your chat and let me know how many of you guys are rehabbing, wholesaling, or doing both. Say flip if you're flipping. Say wholesale if you're only wholesaling. Say both if you're doing both. Let's gauge what's going on here. Okay, so we've got a lot of both and rehabbing, some wholesale peppered in as well. Okay. Yeah, and if you're
So real
flipping, I'm sure
quick,
you.
um, I'm watching everyone's answers real quick. If you guys are only wholesaling, this is just my personal opinion. It is only a matter of time before your overhead will not make sense. And you've got to start getting educated on the flipping side. And this is where it starts because you've got to understand the basics of repair estimates. Now, what happens with a lot of wholesalers is if you're not flipping, you tend to get repair estimates wrong. Especially if you go build closers or an acquisitions team, because if you've never flipped a house or you don't normally flip, it's really hard for them to understand repair estimates when the owner doesn't. Okay. And this underwriting training and comp training should be a part of your onboarding. So whether it's your one man show or you have a team or you're going to hire a closer at some point, this is your job to put in front of somebody else so that they thoroughly understand how to build a scope of work. Okay. Um, and then if you're only flipping, I think we already know the answer to this. My guess is you're tight on cash flow because houses are just sitting. We know because we have 30 to 40 of them going on ourselves, and we have some that are just sitting as well. We're not, some special flipper in the country that doesn't also have a couple houses sitting. So, anyways, what I want to do is Josh, let's dive in now to like really thoroughly going through the process. And if you guys could ask lots of questions in the chat, I will interrupt Josh and ask him in case he doesn't see it. I'll make sure I ask the question live so that we can make sure we get your questions answered as we go.
Yeah, Tiff, what can you explain what you mean by going through the process here? Because I was going to go through these components and then
Yeah,
dive
that's what I
into.
meant.
Okay, got it. So then the last thing when it comes to the electrical systems is just understanding the electric panel. So what you can see here, this is a push-o-matic breaker box. Oftentimes, you know, the municipalities will allow those to be grandfathered in. The like one that you should definitely be aware of is what's called a Federal Pacific box. Those breakers have been recalled because they're fire hazards. Okay, so if you ever see a Federal Pacific branded box, you should account for that being replaced because that's the easiest way to have an inspector tell a buyer to go running for the hills. So those are the things that you're going to want to be looking for. Now, when it comes to plumbing, these are the different types of plumbing materials. In your older homes, you have cast iron, which is what you see here between these two photos. Then we also have copper here, PEX, which is like probably the most up to date, and then even a lot of drains even today are PVC. So the problem with this type of cast iron, and I'm going to walk through a few different scenarios. We had a property that unfortunately was a very big problem property for us early on when we first got into real estate, and it was a property in a historic district. And the home inspector walked through the house when we were in the process of selling it, and they had this feeling that the water pressure just wasn't adequate. It wasn't enough. Without any meters, without any readings, they just had this hunch. And what they said was they thought that the water pressure was not um, adequate because of the type of plumbing that was cast iron, and because as you can see here, this cast iron pipe, as it corrodes, the water can't flow as much. It can't flow as easily. And so what ended up happening was they recommended a replacement of the water line from the street to the house, which is a pretty expensive item. Other things that can pop up just to be aware of are drain lines can collapse. If you're looking at a house that's built in, the 50s, 60s, or even 70s, and a lot of the drain stacks are made of this type of plumbing. So if the house had sat vacant for 2 or more years, by the time you go run water through the new bathtub, when you get all that hooked up, it's a real possibility that that drain can collapse, and that's going to be a couple $1,000s in a repair to repair that drain line and repair the drywall and the ceiling and all that stuff. So again, these are the types of surprises that can pop up. But the more we know about the anatomy of a house, the more we can anticipate those types of things. So now when I go and I'm talking to a seller and I understand the house has been vacant for 5 years, oh, it's a 1964 build. Oh, it's probably got cast iron pipes like this. Oh, I should probably make sure I have enough in my contingency here to plan for any unknown pipe breaks like from the drain line perspective, like I'm explaining here. Okay, so this is why that's important to know that information. Next is going to be your HVAC. What we look for here is typically we look for a furnace or AC to be 12 years or less. If it's 12 years old or less, then we do not account for replacement. And the reason for that is because typically the manufacturers, obviously different manufacturers are going to have different life cycles, but they're typically going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 years. So we pinned it at 12, and this is something that's worked really well for us. But just to help you understand what you're looking at here, this picture is an old boiler unit. This is a newer boiler unit. It boils water and it runs that water to units that look like this. And this is a radiator. And this is where they would put one or multiple of these units in rooms way back in the day in the early 1900s. And that's what they used to heat the spaces. Obviously, a very outdated way of heating a space. So in Columbus, here's something that's interesting. In Columbus, if a property has a boiler, it's getting ripped out every single time. But in Toledo or even certain parts of Cleveland, a lot of the older properties, their values just aren't high enough to where it would make sense to have that kind of improvement. So they keep those things in there, and they might just swap out the unit here versus swapping out the entire system. And so this is why it's important when we're running our comps and knowing the market that we're in. When we see what the comps have, then we can determine what we need to do to our property. This goes into determining what exact repairs we're going to put into the property, which then is going to help us back into an accurate offer to make a profitable offer to a seller. Tiff, I see you jumping back on. You have something to chime
I
in
just
on.
saw someone ask, do you budget to always replace cast iron if a house has it?
So not, I don't necessarily budget to replace it. I budget for a repair if there's a break. So I'm not replacing the entire drain system to answer that question. I'll have a few $1,000s in there to fix that section that might break, and also do any drywall repair and painting and patching and stuff like that.
Okay.
Awesome. So the next item here is going to be the roofing component. So a much older and outdated way of roofing, as you can see here, is slate. This is where you're going to find some properties that are built in the early 1900s will have this. The biggest thing is just to know whether or not you're in a historic district that's going to require you to replace like with like. Oftentimes in historic districts, if it has slate, you've got to put slate back on, or there's a different approval process that you have to go through. Be mindful of that. But most of the houses that we see are asphalt shingle. You have two different types of asphalt shingles. You have your three tab and you have your architectural shingle or dimensional shingle. And the most important thing to know here is just understanding the life cycle or life expectancy of these asphalt shingles. Typically, a three tab roof is going to be a 20-year shingle. And typically, a dimensional shingle is going to be a 30-year shingle. Our rule of thumb, and you're going to want to make sure you write this down. Our rule of thumb is to make sure that it is, if it's within 5 years of the end of its life, we budget for a replacement. So if we ask a seller how old their roof is and they tell us it's 15 years old, does it need replaced? Well, it depends. If it's the three tab like you see here, remember this is a 20-year shingle. So 15 years is within 5 years of the end of its life. Therefore, we will budget for replacement. If it's 15 years, but it's this dimensional shingle, we are not budgeting for replacement because it's only half of its life expectancy and not within the 5 years. So, this is really important to make sure you guys are following along with me. So, if you could go to your chat, give me a yes if you guys are following along with these specific life expectancy deadlines that we've put in place when it comes to HVAC, when it comes to the roof, when it comes to those items. Beautiful. Okay, cool. You guys are crushing it with engagement, by the way. Keep that up. You know, my mom always told me that you get out of a training what you put into it. I'd be going to school. You get out of school what you put into it. You get out of this training what you put into it, and you guys are doing an awesome job of engaging when we're asking you to. So keep that up. So we also have the Windows section. When it comes to windows, if it's wooden or if it's aluminum, we're going to budget for replacement of those items. Again, buyers are asking for these older, outdated types of building materials to be replaced. It's just the way things have shifted. Vinyl, we're going to keep it, but we're replacing these wood or aluminum with vinyl windows. The next thing is going to be siding. There's a ton of different types of siding, and how we account for whether we paint or patch and repair and paint siding versus replace it all is we go to what the comps have. What the general rule of thumb, and again, this is another note that you're going to want to make sure you write down, and I have a slide for this later on just as a good reminder, but this is critical. We want to make sure that the major mechanicals we benchmark to the life expectancy. The cosmetic items we benchmark to what the comps have. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that again. The roof, the furnace, the air conditioning, the water heater, all of those things, we are going to look at the age that it is compared to the life expectancy. But the kitchen, the what we do with the siding, whether it's like obviously we've got to make sure the siding is functional, but whether we replace siding or we paint siding is going to be determined on what the comps have. Whether we replace the kitchen or paint the kitchen is going to be determined based on what the comps have. Same thing with the bathroom, same thing with the basement, okay? What do the comps have? And we're going to make our house look just like the comps. If we account for too much in our repair estimates, and we could easily price ourselves out of deals, and we want to avoid that as well. So as you can see here, we've got aluminum siding, we've got asbestos shingle here. This picture is a little harder to tell. The darker color is painted brick. The lighter color is stucco, and then you have your vinyl siding. You also have wood siding. If there is wood siding, an item that can add up really quick is rot wood. Okay, if there's wood rot and you've got to replace those boards and then you got to go back and paint the whole thing, those are costs that can add up very quickly if we don't account for them. When it comes to the kitchen, again, remember, we're looking at the comps to determine what we do with the kitchen. We're looking at the comps to determine what we're doing with the bathrooms. I always like to ask a seller what era they would date their kitchen. I think of 1980s looking like this image over here, where we have the fluorescent light fixture, wooden cabinets that have these interesting decorative pieces across the open cabinets, versus like a 90s kitchen that has recessed lighting, not fluorescent lighting. And 90s kitchen also has like a cheaper style of cabinet, it looks like, right? It's not as bulky of wood. Then I have like the 1960s. I picture this. It's plywood construction. It's built in place cabinets. And then you're more modern. I would consider more white shaker, but I will say we've shifted away from white shaker and we're going towards oak shaker cabinets. So that's becoming more of the trend now. Tiff, do you have something to add to that?
Guys, real quick, I'm just curious, can you guys go to the chat and tell me, do you guys do virtual phone sales or in-person appointments? Just say phone or in person for me in the chat, please. Okay, so there's a mixture. Um, this is an example, guys, where in the sales process, because a lot of times, like flippers or people that do in-person appointments, they're like, how could you ever build a repair estimate if you've never gone to the property? It's all about the process in which you're following on the phone. So this is a good example of as he's going through this kitchen, like in our phone sales process, we aren't just saying like, is your kitchen updated? We're saying, are your cabinets oak, white shaker, metal, etc.? Are your floors click and lock, tile, carpet, hardwood? Are your appliances black, white, stainless steel, etc.? Like when you ask that level of detail, you start to be able to shape a picture of the property. So as you run comps, which Josh is going to do next, after all this, then you'll be able to come up with a pretty close repair estimate along with understanding the comparables. Now, when it comes to the inspection, we personally send out a licensed inspector and we send out our GC for a scope of work at the same time. And so we'll get into that in a little bit, but I just want to make sure in this, while he's going through the kitchen, for those of you that think you have to go out to a property to flip a house, I just want to walk you through that. Like this maps or this mirrors our sales process. So as he's going through each of these things, we're discovering this through a phone conversation.
Perfectly said, Tiff. Great job with that. Thank you for clearing that up. The last item here, well, not the last, before the last item, we have our bathrooms. We need to understand the items that they've updated, if any at all. We need, to Tiff's point, like we do for the kitchen, we need to understand the shower surround. Is it a tile surround? Is it a vinyl surround? Have you replaced the vanity? What kind of vanity do you have? What's the color of the vanity, if it's painted or not painted? Have you done any updates with the toilet? And then lastly here, we have flooring. And there's a number of different types of flooring. Obviously, there's carpet, there's sheet linoleum here, there's tile, there's LVP. We use LVP in all of our rehabs. There's laminate, peel and stick tile, hardwood, engineered hardwood. So there's a lot of different options there. And again, this is another one of those cosmetic items where what determines what we do with our property, the subject property, is based on what the comps have, because the flooring is yet again another cosmetic item. So just a quick reminder, we want to always make sure we're asking the right questions to a seller, and if we're doing this over the phone, the more descriptive of the condition, the more description of the condition we have from the seller, the more accurate our offer can be, because the more accurate our repair estimate will be. But we always want to make sure the major mechanicals are benchmarked upon the age. Okay, so we don't want to ask a seller, does your furnace work? We don't want to ask a seller, does your roof have a leak? No, it's how old is your roof? It's how old is your furnace? So we're going to benchmark that to the life expectancy. But the cosmetic items is going to be benchmarked to the comps. Okay. That's a critical component. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a live example of running comps here with this property here. And before we do, I do want to just show you guys this tool that we're using currently internally to underwrite all of our deals. Tiff, do you want to chime in on this tool?
Yeah. Guys, can you drop a link to the Google Drive real quick again? Just to make sure anyone that's new, because I'm going to share my screen. Let me see here. You guys should all have gotten a drive link and this guide is in it. Um, there's also templates, checklists, whatever, and it's all under this guide. Now, we we get asked this question a lot. A lot of people say that actually, can you guys go to the chat for me? What are you using to comp right now? Are you using Zillow, like some platform, MLS? What are you guys using to comp? Okay, so it's a little bit all over the board. All right. Guys, Zillow is a retail platform. You should not be running comps on Zillow. Like today is the end of the day where you run comps on Zillow. So now running comps on MLS is fine. All right. Now we used to always run them on the MLS. We now use a software that we've been using for a few months now called Property Machine, propertymachine.com. The reason why is because, and we've been testing it for a while, we've switched our entire acquisitions team over. because it has access to both the MLS and cash transactions, which you cannot get on the MLS itself. Ultimately, obviously, having access to the MLS, so that you can get actual closed comps, etc. But ultimately, the gap is right here. You can only see the retail houses, right? On Property Machine, and Josh will show you some examples. Like, let's say that a house sold off market to an investor 3 doors down from a house that you're comping. You wouldn't see that on the MLS. You can see that on Property Machine. Okay. I just got asked about Privy. Guys, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut, but I'm pretty sure Privy is like not even gonna be a company soon. I don't even want to get into that. All right. So, all right, let's see here. Trying to find where I put the stuff on. I don't know. Anyways, Josh is gonna go through some examples. The other cool thing is, and I don't remember, Josh, how much is Property Machine? I think it's like only $60 a month for just the comping tool. And it's like a no-brainer, okay, to have access to the MLS and off-market transactions in one view. They have an upgrade as well, which we have. And the beauty is that you can see the stacked distressors. And I'll have Josh show you that. But for example, let's say you're comping a property and you're on the phone with a seller. It'll also tell you, like, is it in foreclosure? Is it tax delinquent? Is it all these other stacked distressors? Okay. Anyways, all the checklist, how we run comps, all the templates, everything is in this guide, as well as right here that he's going to go through. But ultimately, guys, Property Machine is a game changer for us. The other beauty is if you're in more than one market, like we're in Columbus and Toledo, you would have to pay for access to the MLS in both markets to have accurate comps. Whereas when you use Property Machine, you have one login for national access to the MLS. So it is a no-brainer from a cost perspective as well. And then like our team all leverages that login. So we can show you some other ways that we use it, but from a comping perspective, guys, they're like first level tier is a no-brainer to use in my personal opinion. If you're on here using Zillow, like stop using Zillow. It is a retail platform. You don't see the bigger picture. You're going to miss things, make bad decisions. That's my personal opinion. You should not be using Zillow, Redfin, all that. Obviously, MLS is great. The beauty of this tool is that you get to see the off-market transactions plus the MLS.
Perfect. Tiff, can I share the screen if you don't mind
Yep.
stopping the share? Perfect. And so let's go ahead and let's dive in. So the property we're going to run through here today is 1675 Ringfield Drive, not Ringfield. I always Ringfield. All right. So I'm going to show you this platform as I go along. So just a few things really quickly. Notice these tabs here. Okay. We've got the overview of the property. We've got property insights. You can see loans that the seller has taken out or loans that have been recorded against the property over time, transactions, and any foreclosure information if that applies, and then the comparables tab. So we're going to go tab by tab here, and we'll end with the comparables tab because we're going to be running comps. But one thing that I love about this platform is I can see the Property Machine types here. These are like the distressors that Tiff was talking about. If this seller just happened to be behind on taxes, it would say tax delinquency. If they were behind on their mortgage and the bank started the foreclosure process, it would say foreclosure here. If it's an inherited property, it'll say inherited, or going through probate if probate was opened up. All of these things we can see, and the thing that's beautiful is if we're on the phone with a seller, obviously our sales process should help pull out as much of that information as possible, but it doesn't stop the fact that oftentimes sellers are very resistant. They've got this guard up because they're afraid you're going to try to rip them off, or that they're not going to get the best deal, and so they might mislead you as an acquisition rep. Well, we can see through a lot of that just from seeing this, and it's right here at the top of the screen. Another thing is this, what's called a wholesale AI score. Okay, so a lot of you have probably heard of like AI data, for example, that's predicting people who are likely going to sell to a cash buyer, an investor, right? So this is on a scale of 1 to 1,000, 1,000 being the most distressed and most likely to sell to a cash buyer. I like to look at anything that's 500 or greater is on the right track for us as cash buyers and buying investment properties. So other insights about the seller themselves. this is another really cool thing is understanding the equity that they have, to make sure that when we are evaluating the property and we are evaluating our exit strategy, we understand where loans might be, even if the seller didn't tell us that information. We can see the property insights itself, like the school district, the year it was built. Like obviously we can get a lot of this on public record, but the beautiful thing about this is that everything is under one roof. I no longer have to go to the auditor site to see what people paid for this property, to see like this specific information, and then going to an MLS or another platform to try to run comparables, and then going to the recorder site to understand if there's a mortgage or a HELOC or anything else like that. I've got all of that right here. Right, I've got financial information as it relates to the property. I can see the building material makeup, which is all good information that we need to understand, right? That it was stick built in areas like Florida, for example. It's important to know if something's block built or stick built. In our market, it's important to know if something's manufactured home or if it's stick built. So we can see a lot of that information here. Now, this is what I love, these two sections right here. The loan section that helps us identify all of the loans that have been recorded on this property. I can also see the transactions. Okay, so think of this. This is really important. One thing that we've done, just given the shifts in the market, is that if I see a comp that's renovated by a rehabber, and you can clearly tell because it's staged, it's freshly remodeled, I'm gonna go look at these transactions to see what that investor paid for that property. This is a benchmark that I'm using to help stress test my offer. For example, if I'm going to go make an offer on a property for 160,000, but I see that other cash buyers are paying 110 to 120, that's a red flag to me that I'm too high. Okay? So this is a great stress test to just see, oh, hey, so and so bought this property, rehabbed it. They're an investor, obviously. Let me go see what they paid for the property. I don't have to, again, go search this one-off property on the auditor, then go to the transactions. It's all in one location. That makes it really quick. And one thing about real estate is that time kills all deals. We have a saying in our office that we've got to act with urgency. When we get off the phone with the seller, we have to urgently underwrite the deal and urgently call them back to make sure we make an offer. So the more speed we get from the moment we talk to a seller to the moment we make an offer, the higher our chances of converting that seller is. The longer we wait, that becomes a diminishing opportunity over time. So speed matters, and this helps us move very quickly. So I can see if it was an investor transaction, that's another thing about these, right? If it sold to an investor or if it was an interfamily transfer. Interfamily transfers or something that went to a trust from an individual to a trust, we don't want to consider those to be comps. Okay, and I'll show you some on this example we have here today. There's one specific transaction that we're going to eliminate because it would bring down our value, and it's not something we should be considering in our after repairs. Okay, so this is why we love this platform. Just a few things right there. We went through them. Overview, property insights, loans, transactions is where we are now. And the last thing here is if this seller was in foreclosure, you would see all of that data right here. Okay, unfortunately, this one just isn't an example of where that is the case. So the last tab here is going to be the comparables, and this is where all the magic happens. Now, the thing I love about the default right here, the default is it gives us a mile. This is another thing that's changed here over the last quarter, or a little more than a quarter. Just as inventory's risen, things that we're looking for is within a mile radius, I need to understand, are there new builds that someone can go and buy? Guys, this is something that we ran into recently with one of our flips. And if we have time here today, I'll show you that specific property. But we pinned our ARV on this property around 350, 360. And what we didn't know at the time was we were looking at the specific subdivision, but we didn't zoom out to see that across the street there were these new builds that they could buy for 390 to 400,000. So just for an extra 30 to 40 grand, they were able to, instead of buying a 1990 build, they could buy a brand new 2025 build. And so that was a lot of the feedback that we got, and that property sat on the market for, I want to say it was about 5 or 6 months. Luckily, we were able to sell it, but that's the type of information that we have to now take into consideration. What options do these buyers have within the mile radius, within the school district? because if we would have pinned that one closer to like 340 or even 330, given that there's more of a gap there, we would have made a better buying decision. Tiff, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, make sure you go over how like you have to press the up arrow or down arrow so that way on the top blue bar it'll tell you in that area like average days on market, all that.
Yep. Yep, I got you. So the one thing that we start with this 1 mile radius, but now what we're going to do is this is just for us to gather the information. Okay. I know this area very well. I actually grew up in this house, so I know that there aren't new builds in this particular section. But I would comb through this and I would look at this, okay, knowing and understanding when that property was built, knowing and understanding when that property was built. And I'd have to click into that. In fact, you can even quickly glance over here. The year built is going to be right here, built. All of those, right? You can see 1990 is the newest of these properties. Now from here, this is where I'm going to start to dial in my search. Now I'm going to go to the specific development here. All right, I'm going to hit this polygon here. Key rules of thumb when I'm diving into the specific development, I don't want to cross major roads. I don't want to cross waterways. I don't want to cross railroads. This is a railroad right here that actually divides this development from that development. Okay, so as I go through this, another thing to look at, I'm going to bounce back here for a quick second. So one thing to notice is this is a 3 1.5 and it's 1,400 square feet. Okay, so as I go back here to the comparables, I'm going to redo this. I wanted to show you that real quick. So I'm going to dial this back in because I'm going to dial in more of my filters based on our subject property, and you can even see it here. Okay, so let's go into this. Let's set our boundaries again. We're a 3 1.5, so I don't want to look at two beds. I want to look at three, four at max. We have to understand that when we go from a 2 bed to a 3 bed, it widens our buyer pool significantly. But going from a 3 bed to a 4 bed, it's not going to be that much of a change from a buyer pool perspective, which is why it's okay to look at a 4 bed, but also do a slight adjustment if I have a 3 bed comparing it to a 4 bed. Tiff?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that do you have the checklist up so that they can see like we have a bathroom checklist. We've got all these checklists. That way you guys should leverage these as you're running comps. Especially if like you're gonna hire someone, you have someone on your team, it'll like really make sure that you're paying attention to every moving factor. I know he's talking about it out loud, but just know that there's checklist in here for you.
Yes, great point. And so the things that I'm talking through is really this pre-work, right? We need to make sure that we have the right address. That's one thing that's critical. We need to understand the property type. We need to understand the gross living area, which is the square footage, the bedroom count, the bathroom count, the year built. We've been talking about these things, and Tiff, you're absolutely right. We should be referencing this checklist. We need to understand the lot size, if there's a basement or no basement, and if there's a garage or not. Okay. Now, when we're talking to the seller or if we're walking the house in an in-person appointment, obviously that's where we're going to be able to gauge the condition and understand if there's any major defects. Now, when we go and we run comps, what we're going to be looking for is the level of finish. This is where we're going to start to determine, are we going to replace the kitchen and put brand new cabinets in? Or are we going to paint the kitchen? Or are we going to leave it basically as is, right? We're going to try to make our property look like, maybe even a little bit better than the comparables. Then we want to have a one sentence ARV assumption. So, guys, this is something else that we added here over the last 4 or 5 months. It's very easy if we just say ARV, plug in a number. It's very easy to go back to that, 3 weeks later, 3 months later, and be like, oh crap, okay, I have this pinned as the ARV, but like, what level of finish is accounting for that? What's the exact plan? Do I need to replace the kitchen or not? So we want to add more context to our decision. That way, if we have to circle back because it's an offer follow-up, if we have to circle back because we ran into a snag in the renovation and we're trying to understand what did we plan for originally, this ARV assumption statement is going to help guide us. It's going to be the lighthouse in the dark here, okay? So this is a great example. It says ARV assumes mid-grade retail renovation, and the notes here are that we're upgrading the kitchen, so we're putting a new kitchen in, we're putting new bathrooms in, and then we're putting new flooring, and we're going to make this thing nice and pretty retail ready. So then as we go in, now I can type in my address, which is what I just did here, right? We type in the address, and then this is where we can start to dial in on these specific features like square footage, bed bath count. That's what we're in the process of doing right now. Then when we go and we evaluate the comps, this is where we have to identify what we're doing to specific items. A few things to just note. Okay, the first thing that'll pop up that I mentioned before I dove into this specific development was I was able to see the breakdown of the CMA. Okay, that's going to be important information that we'll circle back to here in a moment. So we want to navigate through the comps, which is what we're about to do, and I'm going to show you how we're able to do that with the map view. We're starting to dial in on that map view. So a few things. We want to look at sold properties, and this is giving you some good guidance on that. Again, we're going to walk through this. We also want to make sure we're looking at pending properties, properties that are in contract, if there are any there that we can look at. And then we also want to look at
And real
active
quick, I want to
properties.
go back to that. So any flipper on here, I'm sure knows this, but when you're pinning an actual, sorry, my light, when you're pinning the actual ARV, the decision is going to be on closed comps. We use the pending and contingent comps because it shows us a trend. So when you go in, Josh can show you a comping summary report in Property Machine. And things that we're going to be looking for are and guys, we didn't have to do this 2 years ago. Okay, this part's important. There is a difference between what are the days on market, list price versus sale price in the close comps versus the contingent comps versus the active comps. So what you're going to do is you're going to run the summary report and you're going to look at the averages by each one of those categories because we want to see, are the pending comps, are they in contract fast? Did they sit forever? Did they decrease in price? Are the active comps, are they newer to hitting the market or have they been sitting a really long time? Now, in the closed comps, let's just say hypothetically that the closed comps have the average days on market was 20 days, but the active comps, the average days on market is like 100. What I'm going to go do next is I'm going to dive now into each individual property between the closed comps and the active to figure out where are the active ones as is? Are they renovated? Are they kind of half-ass renovated? Are the closed comps, did those move in 20 days because they're full-blown renovated? And we need to look at these trends of what's causing the difference between a 20-day on market versus 100 days on market. And in the past, we really didn't have to go to this level of detail because inventory was so short. Where I see flippers making a lot of mistakes right now is we're not paying attention to the trend of those three categories. And in addition, once we lock down an ARV, we have to ask ourselves, like in Columbus, all the public school districts are really good schools. And so if I have this house in this neighborhood worth 400, hypothetically, now I have to do a one last glance of let me open up the entire school district, right? If that is what is attractive in this location, the school district, I'm going to now open this school district and say, are there new builds in this school district that are selling for 380 to 420? Because if so, you are now competing against a new build in the same school district when new builders are buying down rates, giving you cash at closing, all this stuff that you cannot compete with. We did not have to do that 2 or 3 years ago. So Josh is going to go through, pull a report and walk you through slowly the trends and the averages per those major categories. Because I promise you, a lot of you who've been in the game long enough probably weren't paying as close attention to those trends when making decisions as you have to today. I also, if I were you, would then start paying attention what were days on market. And you can go to ChatGPT, guys, and ask Chat and say, hey, for this metropolitan area or for this county, city, state, what is the average days on market by month for this zip code or whatever area you want to say? And then if it's going up by 5% a month, you better plan on it continuing to go up by 5% a month for these 6 months that you're going to hold it. Okay. These are different things, guys, that we didn't have to do a few years ago, or I should say you got away with not having to do a few years ago. And so these categories of looking at the averages by pending, active, and closed is more important than it ever was before.
Awesome. Thank you, Tiff. I had a few other things too to just really add to what Tiff's talking about. When it comes to active listings, we need to understand the competition, like Tiff mentioned, right? We need to understand the competition. We need to understand how long they've been sitting on the market. And when we understand the average days on market, now we can start to anticipate and build in our own contingencies based on longer days on market. Okay. Um, so that's ultimately what when we see the active inventory, we see the days on market, and we see the list versus sales price. That's going to help us now start to understand what we're likely going to have to do to our property. How long are we going to sit on it? How many price reductions are we going to have to make in order to drive the right amount of interest to drive an offer, right? These are the things that we need to make sure that we're looking at when we're going through this. So back here to the system. Again, we are 1,400 square feet, 3 bed, 1.5 bath. Now, it's important that we dial this in, right? We're going to mess with these filters a little bit more. And and so what we want to do is we want to make sure we're looking at 3 beds, but we don't want to see 2 full baths. Okay, we want to look at 1 to 1.5 baths because 2 full baths likely is going to mean that there's some sort of owner suite, and an owner suite is going to be much more desirable than a 1.5 bathroom. Okay, that's why we want to cut that off whenever we have those specific specs. Also, here's the different types. Okay, ours is a single family house, so we don't want to look at condos. We don't want to look at townhomes, multifamilies, apartments, or any other components, right? Now, notice I don't have any comps here based on what we're pulling in right now. And so when I dial it in like this, if I don't have at least 2 solid comps, that's the bare minimum that we want to have is at least 2 solid comps to pin our value, then I'm going to go back a year to see what pulls in here. Okay. And as you can see, we've got 3 comps that fit our specifications. We've got a 3, 1.5, that's 1416, the exact same square footage as ours. That's a great sign. We've got another one that's the exact same square footage as ours. And then we've got another one here that is close, but not exactly the same. Now, when I'm also looking at this, it's important as we go through here that we want to see, all right, we have 275 to 280 to 500. So what's the difference in the cost here? I also want to, like I mentioned, I also want to look at things like our days on market. Okay, so you can see days on market. In fact, notice this. See this? Public record, MLS. So this one was not listed. This one was not listed on the MLS. This one right here was also not listed on the MLS, but this one was. So what I can do is I can jump in here, and as I do this, I can go and I can see the photos of the property here. Okay, so I can see this is a bi-level. Okay, ours is a 2-story. This bi-level is going to be less desirable than a 2-story, but I'm looking at the level of finish here, right? I can see that it looks like it's got a newer floor, may not be brand new. It could be a little older. You know, we've got some updated light fixtures that were updated at some point. Not necessarily saying that it was brand new. This definitely doesn't look like a rehabber came in here and completely remodeled a house. Even though there's some updates, you can see like this barn door here. Um, we have the barn door, so somewhat of an update. The kitchen looks like it's probably original, but it has some updates. It's got tile backsplash. It's got a granite countertop. You know, they've added pools to the doors and the drawers. And here's another updated light fixture. Okay, so there's some minor updates, but it's by no means a complete overhaul renovation. Okay, and this one's sold for. I'm going to continue to go through this. Now, this bathroom has a new vanity, and it looks like okay, they've got a walk-in shower. This house because it's 1.5 baths. It probably had a bathtub at one point, so they may have replaced this shower, replaced this vanity, and did like an owner-occupant type of renovation. Okay, We can see here there's tile floors. Okay, it looks pretty nice. It's clean, but again, it's not a rehabber that came in here and revamped the whole place. You can even see here they remodeled this bathroom as well. So it's good to see that information. Now, this one sold for, let's see, I believe it was 280 if I go back here. Yes, 280. All right, so then I'm going to look at this one here, really close to us. And this house is the same exact specifications as our house. Now let's see the level of finish here. Okay, when I'm looking at this, I can see that it's got a new floor. Looks like it's fresh paint. They didn't paint the trim, but it's clean. You can see updated light fixtures as we get into the kitchen. Let's see here. Looks like it's the original kitchen minus, maybe some appliance upgrades. So far what I'm seeing is I could get away with a light kitchen renovation. All right, this is what I'm going to be noting so far based on what I'm seeing, and some bathroom updates, and then our base packages. And this is going to make more sense when we get to this. So as you can see here in the bathroom, they did some bathroom updates. It's a newer vanity. It's got newer flooring in the tile
Josh,
flooring.
we're getting people asking questions why you went back a year versus expanding your distance,
Because I want to try to see
especially in
what's
today's market.
specific. Yeah, because I want to specifically see this specific neighborhood first before I expand that out. That's why.
Okay.
So from here, again, I'm trying to understand this specific neighborhood, and then I can start to tailor that out a little bit more and expand our search a little bit more. So as you can see here, we've got looks like new floor, paint, stuff like that. Again, a remodel here in the bathroom. This seems to be a pretty nice renovation with tile surround, newer vanity. This one happens to have a finished basement as well. Okay, and then now let's go back here. In fact, go back to this, and we're going to look at our last one here, which is also the same exact specifications as ours. All right, so here I can see it's the same exact specifications. Then, okay, so we've got somewhat of a newer floor, but this thing is definitely not renovated like a rehabber. So all of these are like owner occupants. It's got a newer kitchen, at least. Some looks like a newer floor here in this part of the house. So again, kitchen updates, bathroom looks like it's probably a little more of original. And this is the one that sold for 275. So this is the cheapest house in this specific neighborhood. Okay, so far as I look at this, I'm thinking a light kitchen renovation, update our bathrooms into our base package, and I'm probably going to be in this 275 to 280 range. Now, what I have to do is I have to go back and stress test that. Okay, so as I go here, and now I'm going to edit my search, and I'm going to open this up just a little bit more. In fact, go back here, go back to our comparables. And now I'm going to dial in to these neighboring neighborhoods, right? So if I'm looking at this, let's get let's see here, our filters. Let's get this to 1200. Let's get this to 1600. I'm going 200 less than 1400, 200 more. I'm also going to dial this in to be 3 beds, 1 to 1.5 baths. I want to make sure I'm only looking at,
You put in 0.5 bath, change that to 1.5.
yes, thank you. That was a fat finger. Okay, cool. So now I've got these properties over here, and now we can start to just stress test our 275 to 280 range. So I've got everything from 150 to 304, 309, 315. Okay, so let's start to ask ourselves, what in the world is the difference? Why are these selling for this much more? Now, as I go into this, okay, so I've got a one full car garage, and as I look at this, this looks more like a house that a rehabber did, right? Okay, so I can see really nice light fixtures. I've got brand new floors. I've got Brand new kitchen. I've got everything has been overhauled in this thing. Okay. And this got us 309. Brand new bathroom. Everything is cosmetically updated in this thing. Looks like a finished basement as well. Okay, so I'm going to note that. Now let's go back to this other property. That got us 315. So let's take a look at this 309. Oh, you know what? Let's go back here. Remember what I mentioned, transactions. I can see what this investor paid for this property. You can see they paid two, almost 213 for this property. So this is a great benchmark for myself to say, all right, um, this person looks like they bought it from a bank, but it's definitely an LLC, probably a cash buyer. And then when they went to go flip it, so this is a great benchmark. If I'm looking at paying 230 for this house, but I see someone else paying 213, that could be a red flag. Maybe even if I'm thinking I've got to be at 170, but I see someone else paid this, I'm already thinking to myself, I could probably offer a higher price now, knowing that there's a buyer, this buyer right here. I know exactly who to go and call. And you can see this transaction just happened just a couple months ago. So it's a great indication of the investor activity that I can quickly look at just based off of that information. All right, so here is this property. Let's see, I don't have any photos, so let's go back and let's see why this one isn't on here. Let's see, Cascara Drive, right here, 1352 is the one I need right here. So this was an MLS. Okay, so let's check this out real quick. All right, so for whatever reason, they might have taken some of the photos off, but it looks like we were able to find them here. Okay, so another note, brand new kitchen, even though it's not quite what I would probably do to a kitchen. It looks like they're newer white appliances, so these are definitely new appliances. They're not like they kept the old white appliances. Interesting vanity door or pantry door there. I've got a renovated bathroom here. Also note though on this one, they're not showing off any like tile surround or anything like that. So they probably have a vinyl surround. In fact, you could see the vinyl in that picture. But everything else cosmetically has been renovated. Maybe not the most trendy finishes, but still got us that 309 price point. Okay, so far I'm seeing if I go and completely remodel the place, that 310 to 315 seems achievable. Let's also look at this. Okay, this one's got different curb appeal than we do with this stone facade here. Okay, when you look at this, it's definitely not rehabbed, but it does have a new kitchen with granite tops and things of that nature. It's a bigger kitchen too for some of these houses. So a brand new kitchen is going to increase my price here a little bit. And a finished basement. So that's another thing that I've noticed. These houses that are going in that low 300s, they have finished basements, they have brand new kitchens, they have all of those things. So now I also want to see, why is this one selling for 265? Okay, this one, our original cabinet. So this is a great example of why we ask the question we do with the seller. Would you date the kitchen more of a 60s kitchen? Because I think of those plywood construction cabinets. That's exactly what we have here. Someone took the plywood cabinets and they just painted them. Okay. You can also see the floor. This isn't like a freshly remodeled house. This is an older floor, laminate floor. That stuff does not show well in person, which is also probably part of the reason why it sold for that 265 range. This was remodeled at some point, but it's definitely not like an after repair value. We're looking for after repair values. Okay, so this I would probably consider more of like a more of an as is type of sale that's like clean but not renovated. Versus the ones that were in our specific neighborhood, if you remember, those ones were they had light updates to the kitchen. They had full bathroom remodels. This one didn't have that. So when I go back here, let's look at another one of these. Is 245. What the heck is going on with that? Oh, okay. So this is something that's important to note. The style of the home. This is a buy level, which is the least desirable style, even though it does have some updates. Kitchen's a little more as is there, or was remodeled, but lightly, and looks like it was remodeled a while ago. I'm going to want to turn down that one. Okay. So let's see here. One thing I haven't done yet that's really important with this tool is as I take this 6024 Winterberry 6024 Winterberry, I'm going to turn that down. When I do that, it removes it from the comp list. All right. So I'm going to make sure, oftentimes you'll see this. This is a duplicate because one's from the MLS, one's from the public record. So I'm going to take the duplicates. I'm going to remove the public record duplicate and keep the MLS one. Let's see, Winterberry, what one? 6024 Winterberry. That's not the same style of a home that we have, which is why I'm going to remove that. I'm also going to remove this. This is crossing a major road here. It's good to at least see this to understand, but I'm not going to make my decision based on that one. And that's on Rigsby. Let's look for Rigsby here. Rigsby, Rigsby. All right. So over here, let's also take a look at this one. I know we just looked at it, but let's see if the style is also playing a role into this. Is it a two-story? Is it a different type of style? Okay, so it is a two-story. All right. We also mentioned that this was more as is and is not quite the complete renovation that we're looking for. Okay. 80K, what the heck is this? Let's take a look. Typically, if I see something like that, I'm going to immediately go down to the transactions and I'm going to see the type of transaction that it was. Okay, so I can see this was a cash buyer that purchased this. They got a heck of a deal. They've got a ton of equity on this thing. But again, this is going to be more of a benchmark, but not something that I'm going to use to pin my numbers here. So I just want to look at this 1387 Cascara, 1387 Cascara. You can see that's a public,
Josh, make sure
not
you're
an MLS
pressing the up
purchase.
arrow on the ones that you are going to use, please.
Yes, I'm getting there. So I can see as I start to hone in and filter on this, this is another one that's at 150. So again, I'm asking myself, what the heck is going on here? Why is this the case? When I look at this property, this is a 3-1, so it doesn't have a half bath and it's a little bit smaller. It's also a completely different style. This is a 3-level split. I don't want to use that as a comparable. So I'm going to take that one and also I'm going to remove it. So this was, there we go. All right, and then let me make sure I'm getting my duplicates out of here. That's a duplicate, and that's a duplicate as well. So remove the public record one. Okay, cool. So this one was the 265. This is the more of the as is one. So now I've got to ask myself, based on the information that we have, a complete remodel can get me in this 304 to 315 range, knowing the market that we're in now. Also taking a look at this days on market for this one in particular. This is 86 days on market. That's on the high end. So I'm going to be more conservative. I'm not going to pinpoint this ARV at 315. I'm going to look closer at 300, maybe even 305, because I'm now factoring in the fact that I'm going to be sitting on the market. But also note that in order to hit that 300 mark, I've got to completely remodel the kitchen. I've got to completely remodel everything. I've got to make sure I've got a finished basement. So if I'm also looking at how I might be able to make this property pencil at 275, I don't have to replace the kitchen. I don't have to add the finished basement. And just on those two things alone, that's almost 20 grand worth of work. So from 275 to 300, it's only a $25,000 difference. It might make more sense, and this is something that we're seeing in today's market, to stick with the lower, more affordable price point and take on that opportunity to undercut these other opportunities. It's a wash from a repair perspective. So I might make the decision here to say, all right, my ARV assumption would sound like this. ARV 275, plan for a light kitchen remodel. Do not worry about finishing the basement. We're trying to undercut the active inventory in the area and make sure we're focusing more on affordability. So the rehab will be more of a light cosmetic renovation, not a full cosmetic overhaul. Okay, so this is what we would do. We would go in here and we would, to Tiff's point, when we hit these up arrows, these thumbs up, this is what's going to help us factor in the average days on market, the average square footage, the average value, the average sale value, right? So you can see it was pinned right at 309 as the average when you take 315, 309, and 304. I'm being a little more conservative in pinning that after repairs at 300, just given the inventory and things of that nature. Tiff, do you have anything else to add to that? Guys, give me a yes in the chat if you're following my decision matrix around light cosmetic renovation and focusing on affordability and undercutting inventory versus pushing for the highest possible value. Okay, cool.
Yeah. The only thing, are you going to run a different comp by chance so that way we can see like more active comps around contingent, active, sold, so we can look at the categories on the report?
I wasn't planning to. I mean, if we have time to, we can. I was going to start to go into backtracking into our offer.
Okay. Yeah, I want to make sure that we show the report.
Oh, you're saying when we download this?
Yeah, so like, but you need to show them when we see active, contingent, and sold comp. So can you open up another screen soon and like actually show the report on how we look at those trends to see like,
Yeah, hold on. I just need to pull up a random property here. So let me think of one that we were looking at. Let's just do this. Let's go into the map. Let's see if there's any over Springcrest. Let's look at this. 2369 Springcrest. Okay, so here's one. Let's see if this one happens to have that. There you go. So you have some pending.
yep. So just go, we're not going to go
Active.
dive into all the comps on this, guys, but if you go down and do there's two different types of comping reports you can pull in here, guys. So just press up the upward on like some pending actives on all of them if you can.
Okay.
All right, and then all right, so then go to comparable sales report. Hold on, go pick the one that is for the stats.
Yeah, hold on. I've got some pop-ups here. Hold on. Give me a sec. Come on. There we go.
The summary
Comparable
stat one.
sales.
So I look at this one first before I look at the bigger comp report. And I take a glance at it, guys, because I'm going to look at the active, the contingent, and the closed when I'm running comps. And if you could zoom in, it will tell you, for example, the active properties, the average is 75 days on market. Contingent is, if you go down, 23. And then the sold go down is,
Average is
why is
somehow right here,
118?
118.
So
Yeah.
then it makes me ask myself, well, what's different about the contingent properties comparatively to the ones that took longer? So if you go up, you can like now start clicking in to look at property photos, just like what Josh went through and say, okay, what is the difference between one sitting for 100 days versus 20 days? And my guess is, without going through the whole process right now because we don't have time, is the level of finishes, or maybe it's the layout. But these things, guys, are like how we're making decisions and looking at trends. Now, the other report that you can download is like your more full throttle comping, where it like shows every property next to each other like this. Um, so anyways, I just want to make sure you guys saw that, and I'll let Josh get back to like how he's going to make the offer or come up with the repair estimate on the other property he was looking at.
Cool. All right. So let's see here. I need to actually pull something up here.
Guys, do you
So
guys see like real quick? And this is more of a message to people using like Zillow or Redfin. Like, I hope that you guys are understanding why it's important that you're not just using those tools, because you're missing information that you need to make better decisions, in my opinion. And I mean, I get it if you already have MLS, etc., but this makes it easier for us. It makes it one more affordable because my team all has this login. We can use it in multiple markets. We have more information based on the seller, the stress factors, the loans, the cash transactions versus the MLS. And so ultimately, I just want to make sure, because like, as we did the survey in the community and saw how many people are in the investment space using Zillow, it is a problem. It is a genuine problem. And there's lots of tools out there. I just want to make sure you guys have access to a really super affordable, great tool that we use. And just really reflect on that if you're still using like a Zillow or Redfin, because I would hate to see you guys make expensive mistakes on that.
yeah, awesome, Tiff. So the other piece to this is, so like, we understand the components of a house, we understand the current condition of the house, we understand now the ARV and the condition of the comps. Okay, so from there, now we've got to go and determine what work we're going to do, which we talked through, right? We talked about how in order to hit that 275 value, that we need to do a light cosmetic renovation. We're going to get into those specifics here in a second. But a few things to just note is we have this. This is an internal tool that we use here. This is our repair cheat sheet. As you can see, there are items that have stars in them. These stars are our what we call base package. So as you can see, we've got cleaning up the landscape. No matter what house it is, we're always going to make sure we're de-weeding the flower beds and putting new mulch down. We're not putting any new plants in. That costs us $500. We're also replacing all of the flooring. This is a base standard. If you think about whenever you have, if you have rental properties, when you turn over a tenant, you're going to go in and you're going to freshen the place up with paint and floors. Well, we're going to do the same thing with any house that's been lived in. So flooring and interior paint are factored in. Then we also have all new lighting. Okay, this is where we're going to do builder grade lights. We're going to be swapping out light switches, outlets. We're putting new cover plates on. We've got a cosmetic demo with dumpsters, right? That's going to be included. We've got cleaning because after renovation, we're going to have to make sure that this thing is clean and ready to rock and roll. And then we also have our contingency that's always factored in. Okay, so without the contingency, you'll see here our base package is right around 19-ish thousand dollars. Okay, so that's where we're going to start. 19,000 to start, and then we're going to go through and put in the items. Okay, based on, again, we're benchmarking life expectancy and the age for the major mechanicals, and then we're looking at the cosmetics. So let's start with the cosmetics before we dive into anything, because that we did talk through that. So when we were going through and we decided 275 with our light renovation, we had a light kitchen update, okay? And we have 1.5 baths. So as you can see, full renovation, we're gonna do one for that, half bath, full renovation, one for that. Okay, that's what we needed to do in order to reach our 275 goal. Interior paint is already an item. So from a cosmetic perspective, we're not going to finish a basement. It's not required to hit that the 275 mark that we said. So we're not going to factor that in. But what we are going to do is we're going to go back now based on, we've got all the cosmetics plugged in. The cosmetics being the floor and paint, that's automatically included. Then the kitchen and bathrooms. Those are factored in. Now we've got to go and see, what did the seller tell us as it relates to the major mechanicals? How old is the roof? What type of shingle is it? That's going to determine if I'm plugging in a roof here or not. Let's just say I don't need a roof, but I need a furnace. But let's say the air conditioning is old, but the furnace is good. So that means I'm only going to do half of this. Okay, if I had to do the furnace and the AC, then I'm going to plug in one here to get us that 7,000. But for just half, doing just the air conditioning unit, it's about $3,500. So now I can see just at a quick glance here, based on my quick repair estimate, I'm doing a cosmetic renovation plus the AC needs replaced. That's going to cost me about almost $38,000. Now that I know my repair costs based on the information I have from the seller, this is where I can now start to backtrack and reverse engineer into an offer. Now, there's a few things here to take into consideration. In fact, guys, go to your chat. Let me know how many of you guys are making offers where you take like your ARV times zero point 0.7 or 0.75 minus your repairs. If you're following a similar formula to that, say yes in the chat. Give me a yes in the chat if that's how you guys are underwriting. I see a handful of you guys saying yes. All right, so we're going to run through this example that you will see. You're likely walking away from some opportunities and or leaving money on the table. Okay, so let's help you solve that right now, so you stop doing that. We have to understand that there's multiple exits that we have at our fingertips here. We can either buy it and rehab it, we can go and wholesale it to someone else, or we can keep it as a rental. We're going to focus on the rehab and wholesale. But the biggest question you need to be asking yourself is one, what's your buying criteria if you're going to rehab it? I'll just tell you ours. The way we measure profits is we want to make a minimum of 30,000 lump sum, and it's got to at least be an 8% return on our total investment, which is our purchase plus our repairs. But just because we buy that way doesn't mean everybody buys that way. So now I've got to ask, what are the other types of buyers and how do they make their decisions? Okay, and the thing that it boils down to is we call this the six major buyer types. We have two overarching types of buyers. We have landlords and we have rehabbers. And when you look at rehabbers, they either want a percent of their total investment in a return. So for example, if someone's buying a $150,000 house, right? 150 purchase, 50,000 in repairs, which is 200,000 all in. If someone wants a 20% return, think to yourself right now, how much do they want to make on that deal? 200 all in, they want 20%. That's going to be a $40,000 profit that they're looking for. Versus the minimum lump sum, like us, Heels Homes, right? We want 30,000. So just in this example, I'm willing to make 10,000 less than the percent ROI guy. Therefore, I can pay $10,000 more for that property. Hopefully, you're already starting to see how buyer by buyer, how much this can change. You also have landlords that are looking for a certain cash flow per door. We have the buyers who are looking to buy at the 1% rule, the 1.5% rule, the 2% rule. We have buyers that are making decisions based on cap rates. And then we also have gross yields. Okay. This is not the end all be all, but this is at least to get you on the right path. The goal here of what you all should be doing is you should make sure that you're getting on the phone with your buyers and understanding how they're making their buying decisions. Are they okay with 20,000 lump sum? Guys, and this changes season by season. Quarter 4, people tighten their criteria. In the spring, they loosen their criteria. We've got to make sure if we're wholesaling our properties that we're talking to our buyers frequently and often to understand how their criteria is changing. And if you have not done that since Q4 of 25, you need to get on the phone now and start talking to your buyers. This could be the reason why your success rate might have tanked recently because you don't understand how people have shifted as the market has shifted. Okay, so here's some examples. Like I said, 150 purchase, 50K in repairs, 200,000 investment. What's the minimum profit they want? They want 40,000 versus the lump sum. If they want to make 30,000, then they could pay more for that same deal, right? They are okay making $10,000 less. Cash flow per door. Everyone on this call has done deals before. You guys understand when we factor in planned maintenance, when we factor in our taxes, our insurance, our principal and interest payment for mortgage, our property management fees, factoring in vacancy, we want a certain cash flow per month, right? And some people even benchmark that cash flow on a certain cash on cash return if they have cash into the deal. So these are things that we've got to be thinking about. The 1% rule, someone would want to be all in at whatever the rent is, if it's 1,500, they want to be all in at 150 because the rent is 1% of their all-in cost. And then we have a couple of examples here. We have cap rate. This is the equation for the cap rate. You have our net operating income. One quick disclaimer is that this assumes that it's a cash purchase, so you don't have a mortgage payment at all. You're factoring in like your property management, your taxes, your insurance costs, any maintenance, those types of things. So you're taking your annual income minus your annual expenses. That gets your net operating income. You subtract that by the market value of the asset, and that spits out your cap rate. The only difference between a cap rate and a gross yield is that the gross yield does not take into consideration the expenses. It's annual income divided by the all-in, which is your purchase plus your repairs. And that's how you would calculate a gross yield. So let's go through a couple of examples here. In fact, actually, we're not going to go through these examples. We're going to plug in our specific deal here, okay? So we have our ARV at 275, we said. Our repairs are about 38,000. And our rent for the property is about 1,800. Let's see here. So we got a 5.5 cap. You can see this buyer is going to be paying 197. This buyer's at 142. This buyer's at 142. This buyer, look at this. All in at 70%. That buyer's paying 154.5. 75% is paying 168. So let's go over to our lump sum buyer. And we've got 275. We're going to use 30,000 as the lump sum. 235, 275. We got 38,000 in repairs. And they want to make 30 grand. So you can say 40 off of that is 185. Okay, that would get them to net 30. This person wants a 15% ROI. So we're going to do 275. Whoops. 38,000. If they want 15%, let's just start off with 185 and see what the percentage is there. So that's only a 12%. 16, 14. Okay, cool. So we're going to stick with 180. That's very close, but not quite to that percentage. So one thing just to note, cash flow with interest rates and things as they've shifted, we're not even going to look at this because they're not even going to be in the ballpark. But one thing that you'll note here is these are all of our different types of buyers, and you can see that our max buyer is this cap rate buyer. Now this cap rate at 5.5 cap, this is an institution. So the next thing you've got to ask yourself is, does this property fit that institution's buy box? For example, this is a 3-bed, 1.5 bath, 1990 build. A lot of institutions that are buying in Columbus, a lot of hedge funds, they want to have a 1970 build, so that checks that box. 3-bedroom checks that box, but 2 full bathrooms. We don't have 2 full bathrooms. We have 1.5 baths. So this doesn't fit that criteria. Therefore, this buyer is not an option for me on this deal. The next best offer here is our lump sum buyer. Now think of this. If you have a seller who's not very motivated and they're solely stuck on price, typically, if that's the case, they're not as negotiable. The more distressed they are, the more value we can add, and the more value we can add, the more we can negotiate. But let's just say the seller is stuck. They want 170, not budging. 170 is it. If you're running your numbers at ARV times 0.7 minus your repairs, you think you can only sell this for a 155. So you go and you make an offer at 140, 135. Meanwhile, you could have locked up the deal and sold it to this buyer and made a $15,000 assignment. Right? This is the power. Guys, go to your chat. Give me a boom if this is eye-opening to you to see that you might have been walking away from some opportunities. Give me a boom in the chat if that's something that you guys think would be super helpful in your business. Awesome. Yeah, so now, as you guys can see, we've been able to take from step 1, understanding the components of a house, how that ties into exactly how we go into calculating what work needs done and how much that costs based on how we ran our comps. We know our ARV because we're using a great tool that can help us pinpoint that and pinpoint it quickly, evaluate the work that needs done, put together a repair estimate, plug it into these calculators to see exactly what we can offer. So again, if I'm looking at this Heels Homes is able to buy this for 185. But if you're making offers with either of these, I will beat you every time because I know and understand the options that I have. I know and understand how my buyers are making decisions, and I can quickly and confidently lock this deal up because in real estate, we all know time kills all deals. So with that said, Tiff, I actually was able to get this in 2 hours. I thought I was going to be rushing through it. So
Yeah, I could tell you were trying to rush through it.
yeah.
Um, all right, guys. Let's take some Q&A. I know that like there's probably people that want us to run comps or do whatever. We have like another 15, 20 minutes. If you guys want, you can raise your hand below and I can bring you over. You can ask us in the chat. You guys should have access to like our personal checklists and guides that we use internally. So hopefully those help. Um, can use the Google Slides. I'll talk to Josh about all that, guys. Like, what questions do you have on actually underwriting? How do nice houses sold off MLS? It says public records. Ask that again, Tony. I'm confused on how do nice houses sold off MLS. It says public records. That just means that if you go to like the transaction history of those properties, my guess is like something was inherited, passed down to family or something like that. So I look at that first.
Yeah, it could have been a neighbor selling to a neighbor's friend even. Like that happens often too.
You guys can also, if you want, I can bring you over live if anyone wants to raise their hand below and let's see here. Which version of Property Machine? We have the AI suite personally because we leverage the buyer side and the MLS offer system on it. I'm actually going to do a training next Thursday on how we've adapted our MLS offer system. We now run it all on Property Machine. In order to do that, you have to have the upgrade version, not just like the tier one. Let me see here. There were comps that says public records, but sold by and partially rehab. I love it. Underwriting guidelines. It really exposes what we need to add our process. Yes, this is how we underwrite every deal, Andrew. Really on using this, not using investor base now. We use both right now, but Kevin, we can take that offline. How can you come up with accurate cost for rehab budget without a contract on here? So guys, Josh, the question that Brant asked, we're not like we didn't do this part of the training today. We do it in our other training. And guys, I have lots of students on here. If you haven't been in our 4-week $27 training, like it's the by far the best value you're going to get for $27 in my personal opinion. I'm sure any of my students on here will probably tell you that on here. But in the 4th week, I go over our disposition side of things. And so when we go over that week, I'll walk you through like how we handle inspections. But what you guys just saw is how our closers are underwriting a deal. Okay.
It's
And
preliminary
like a
underwriting.
preliminary, yes. Now, when we go put that property in contract, what we do is we get a license inspection report and we also send our GC out to the property. So a lot of flippers are like, how do you guys never walk a property? What we do is when we do the inspection, we send out the license inspector at the same time as our GC. They both walk the property together. One fills out a scope of work, one fills out the license inspection report. We then take that and make decisions from there. Guys, our change orders have significantly decreased since we've started following the system a few years back. And if you're a flipper on here, I think we can all agree to all the wholesalers on here that when a wholesaler sends out a property with a license inspection report, you are more apt to get a way higher price on it because you're equipping the buyer now with the right information to make a decision on buying that property. And so, like, as a flipper, if you send me a half-ass like summary of this property and only 20 photos and you want an offer from me, I'm going to have to make some assumptions of like, oh, that kind of looks like a crack in the basement, so I'm going to have to plan on worst case scenario. But if you give me a license report, I can make the most accurate uh offer possible. Okay? Um so anyways, let me look at the chat real quick because I can't keep up with everything.
Here, I got the next question. Anthony's asking on the last example that I gave, if I were to wholesale it versus rehab it, what would my offer have been? Well, I know that very, 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 very max, not necessarily what I would want to do, would be 180, knowing I have a buyer at 185. I would like to be at least in the 10 to 15 range from an assignment perspective, but this is where you have to determine what's the minimum you're willing to take. And obviously, we're going to try to negotiate with the seller as much as we can, but at some point, you're going to have to say, I'm willing to do that, or I'm just not willing to do that. So that's why, every person is going to be different. Some people will want 10,000, some people want 5,000, some people want 20,000. So you've got to determine what your minimum threshold will be. Thomas is asking, understanding your client's ROI, do you give yourself percent margin of error? So, um, Thomas, the one thing I will say is that if I'm close, right? If I'm close with a seller, let's say we're 5, 10 grand off, I would rather put that in contract and then go through the process. And the reason for that is because, to your point, like someone might speculate a higher ARV, and if that's the case, great, right? I'm okay with that because I'm wholesaling it. I don't want to speculate that ARV if I'm buying it, but if I'm close, I'm going to put it in contract and I'm going to give it a shot. But I'm not pushing things through with the anticipation that I'm going to renegotiate. If I'm putting something in contract, it's because I believe I can make it work at that contract price. So I hope that helps answer your question there. Let's see here. Matthew, are there ever instances where you have a property that is built in like 1965 and you run the inspection and find out the mechanicals are great and it is pretty much in turnkey condition that end up going to an institutional buyer? I'm not quite sure what the question is here. Matt, I don't know if you can try to clarify that a little bit more. I think your question is just overall selling it to institutional buyers. If their threshold, if their buy box is at 1970 and this is 1965, even though it's turnkey, they won't buy it. They're pretty strict on their buy box. And this is the sauce. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate that. Jamie, is there a basic price point sheet for certain repairs or is that market specific? Yeah, Jamie, great question. That is very market specific. So here's some action items for you guys. If you're watching this, you can if you're only wholesaling, you can go to 5 of your top buyers and give them that repair cheat sheet and say, can you fill out like this isn't an effort for me to not waste your time. I want to put the right deals in front of you, deals that you're going to be excited to take a look at. With that being said, I know that things have changed over the years. There's been inflation, material costs, labor costs, all of these things. What do you think these items would cost? Get 5 opinions. The reason why I want 5 opinions is because you don't want one or two people to think, oh, I'm just going to tell them a higher price. That way, they're overpriced, and I know I've got room on the deal. Okay, so we don't want to do that. We just want to make sure we're stress testing that, get multiple opinions. Or if you're a rehabber, take it to your contractor. We often, every single quarter, we get new pricing sheets from our GCs. This is so we make sure that there aren't big swings in our costs. If there are, we're going to ask why and then make sure we're accounting for that in our underwriting. Copy of the spreadsheet. If that's going to be like an internal team thing, we typically, Jancel, don't provide that just on a training like this.
Yeah, I'll chat with Josh, guys. I just gave you guys access to all of our underwriting training, so let me chat with Josh and I might throw it in the drive for you guys.
This property machine
Um,
find most
let's
houses.
see here. Guys, by the way, we do trainings like this every Thursday in the community. So if you're in the community, make sure you watch out for like your emails or post or whatever. Next Thursday, we're doing one on how we're running free marketing channels. And we're going to go deep into how we recently changed our MLS offer system. We actually leverage Property Machine for that, and it's been a game changer because it allows you to get like super narrow focused on how you make MLS offers on distressed properties. So just in case you're like new to our community or something, just watch out for emails or whatever. By the way, if you D&D us on text or email, you won't ever get invites to them. So don't D&D us if you want to be able to attend the free trainings. So, all right. Very much. Yeah,
David's asking, does Property Machine find most houses? He says he's used other comping tools in the past and they were hit or miss. David, we've tested the better part of a dozen different platforms. We ran into the same with other platforms. I have not ran into any issues with Property Machine since we've been using it. It's been pretty on point. So I have a lot of confidence in this tool. And like I said, our team internally, our sales manager, we thought about bringing him on here. He raves about this tool. He loves the fact that we were able to get our hands on this. So the team loves it, and we have not ran into any challenges as it relates to that. Um, all right. How are you asking buyers how they are underwriting their deals? I encounter lots of friction when I ask. Yeah, Alex, great question. So, we're talking to our buyers, and it's a check-in, something along the lines. If it's an existing buyer, we're just like, hey, things. Obviously, I've changed a little bit in the market. Just want to touch base. Are you still buying? First and foremost, okay. Are you still buying rehabs if they were buying rehabs? Okay. Are you still looking for the same type of returns, or has that changed? Hear them out. If they give you friction, like this is a great example. A lot of times buyers will say, "Oh, I buy all in at 70%." It's like, okay, so I just want to make sure. I always stress test this. I say, I just want to make sure I've got my rehab calculator. We buy rehabs ourselves, but I've got my rehab calculator up here, and if I, I would pull up this exact example here and say, um, I've got a 275 ARV on this particular property. 38,000 is what we estimated on repairs based on what the seller told us. If at a 185 purchase, you make 30 grand. So you're not going to buy that deal. I just want to make sure I understand. You're not buying that deal. And oftentimes you'll see, oh, well, no, I mean, I would buy that one. Okay, so you're not buying all in at 70% then. Okay, just help me understand what is the criteria. Would you buy it with 25,000 in profit? Would you buy it in 20,000 in profit? Would you buy it with 15,000 in profit? I'm going to go until they say no. And then when I understand what that threshold is, whether it's the percent ROI or it's the actual lump sum, that's what I'm going to benchmark in my CRM as how they buy. Let's see here. Combing through a lot of this. There's like 76 unread messages, Tiff, if you want to pick up some of these. Let's see here. When's the next 4 week? Tiff, we want to talk about the next 4 weeks? We got a lot of questions
Yeah,
about
if
4 weeks and
we're
signing
getting
up
a
for
lot of
that.
questions around it, guys. For those of you that don't know, we do a 4 week virtual program. The first 4 Wednesdays of the month, so it's actually starting for February coming up. I did not plan on talking about this, but if you want information, it's the first week is marketing and data. So we talk through how do we reverse engineer what to spend, where to spend it. Because a lot of people, guys, in today's market are like legitimately operating like a fly by night operation. And you could get away with that years ago. You can't today. And so we've really got to understand how to optimize our numbers, etc. Week 2, we go through our acquisitions process. Week 3, we then go through our KPI tracking, scorecards, how do we make decisions on the numbers, and how a lead flows through the system. And then week 4, we go over how do we monetize every lead through our dispositions, exit strategies, how do we leverage license inspections, do the scope of work at the properties, all of that. It's only 27 bucks. We also have a 2-day workshop here at our office every month. But ultimately the front end, guys, the 4 week program is really about the foundation of the company. I don't care if you want to do 2 deals a month or 30 deals a month. How you market, acquire, and sell a deal doesn't change. What changes as you want to go from 2 deals a month to 30 deals a month is really your team size and putting in the infrastructure. And results driven isn't here to teach you guys how to do a deal. We're here to teach you how to build a business that does predictable deal flow. Two totally different things. And so I just want to make sure I'm clear on that because I saw a couple people in here say, like, I know just like there was only a couple in here that said they've never done a deal. We don't really teach people how to do their first deal. We take people that are doing deals but need to put in the infrastructure, the systems, the processes in order to gain really repeatable and consistent deal flow. And I always say like getting off the roller coaster. So if that's like in a nutshell what results driven does, if you haven't been in our programs, I don't know, I think our team dropped the link to it in the chat in case you guys want to join. But next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern is week 1 of the 4 weeks for February. So you guys are welcome to join. Again, it's the cost of going to McDonald's for dinner tonight. So ultimately, and we've got tons of people in this training right now live that have been through that program. So what other questions did you say, Josh, that you wanted me to answer?
Jeff Holman's asking a question about garage conversion. He's asking how we how we look at those, because what he does is he'll look at the square footage and reduce the square footage of the garage. Now, typically, again, this is where we're going to go back to the comps. What do the comps have? I'm going to look at houses that converted garages versus houses that didn't. If there are no comps that converted a garage into living area, then it's all speculative, and I don't want to ever speculate. So instead, I'm going to factor in like unconverting it to make it more of the standard of what fits that neighborhood. So that's how we look at that. Another thing too, just with garages in general. Um, if our house does not have a garage, and it's like there's like certain gentrification areas in town that I'm thinking of here, um, because of use, I always like to look at if a garage versus no garage, or a finished basement versus no finished basement. Every area is different, and buyers attach different values based on the specific location. So in gentrification areas, for example, here in Columbus, in Southern Orchards is a specific neighborhood I'm thinking of. If you have a garage versus not having a garage, you can get an extra 30 to 40, maybe even 50 grand out of a deal. And if it costs you 20 grand to build a two-car garage, if you can make 30 on spending an extra 20, that's an ROI that I'm going to be good with, and it's probably going to help me move that house faster. So those are the metrics I'm looking at. Can help me get more than my investment, and will help me move the house faster, because again, time is money. The longer we sit on a house, the more we're paying in interest and utilities and taxes and all those things. All right, let's see. What's the average assignment? Our average assignment fee is around, I want to say it's like 13 or 14 grand in 2025. I just looked at that yesterday. Do you guys do novations, David? David, we've done a handful of them. Hasn't been like the main focus for us, but we have done them, yes. What are the AI features Nicole's asking? There's AI like predictors, like AI data, but then there's also the AI buyer match, which is a really cool feature as well, Nicole. Um, like cap rate buyer, yes. How do you decide to rehab and hold versus flip? Andrew's asking how we decide what exit strategy. For the most part, it's going to depend on business needs first and foremost. Secondly, I'm also going to be looking at my total ROI on a flip, the time I have invested in that flip, and think of it as like a dollar per whatever the dollar amount per day of hold is, or the cash conversion there, the risk, what's the days on market, right? What am I thinking a worst case scenario is going to look like on this property if I rehab it versus taking this assignment right now that I have an opportunity to do? There's not a one size fits all, but that's kind of the decision matrix that I go through. If I can make the same amount assigning it that I would make flipping it, I'm going to assign it. If I can make 10 grand less assigning it, here's a great example. We have one right now that I can make 20 assigning it, or I can make 29, almost 30, rehabbing it. But given the inventory in the area, the days on market in the area, and knowing that there's a good chance I might take an offer 10 grand less on the retail side of things, I'm going to go ahead and assign that and take the 20 today. It's speed, it's velocity, it's stuff like that. Um, let's see here. What about underwriting for creative seller finance deals? I've got a lead in Jack's looking for seller finance. The thing I'll just say about seller finance is just make sure that you have built-in equity. Tiff, I don't know if you want to chime in on the creative financing side of things. I know you talk about that a lot.
No, we don't have time to go through all that today.
Okay. All right.
All right, guys. So we got to wrap up because I'm speaking at a different event tonight. Again, watch your email because we have another training next Thursday, and we're going to go over how we've revamped our entire MLS offer system. So for all of you guys doing direct to seller marketing that need a free channel, show up. It won't be as long as this one. It'll be more shorter. And I'll walk you through how we are leveraging Property Machine to get super narrowed in. To making the right MLS offers. And I know everyone on here, guys, like the market shifted. So everyone in here needs a free marketing channel. So I don't care if you're big, small, medium, doesn't matter. Next week, we're going to talk more around like agent outreach, MLS offer system, how we're doing free channels and systemizing it. So we will also send a follow-up email following this live with the link to the recording, the link to the drive, and you'll probably see like 2 or 3 follow-up emails. So the team will be handling that. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to respond to those emails. We'll make sure that we respond to all of them. Again, if you haven't added yourself to our school community, please do so. We put tons of free resources in there. Next Wednesday is week 1 of the February 4-week coaching that we do. That's $27. And if you guys want help again with the marketing, sales, KPIs, please be on our 4-week versus like individually reaching out to us because for less than going to McDonald's, me and Josh pour tons of hours every month into this training. And so I just recommend you show up to that. And guys, can you make sure you drop up? Looks like they just dropped the link to the school community in case you're not in it. We're always putting in updates of like all of our free trainings, etc. I can tell just from feedback across the country, every single individual market is very different right now and how people are getting impacted. And so you'll see Josh and I pour into more of these free trainings to really help people get out of situations that they're in. And we are a big believer that it all starts with underwriting. Underwriting is creating a domino effect of problems for flippers, wholesalers, etc. And so getting really good at this skill set, in my opinion, is probably one of the top skill sets you need to make sure you have honed in if you don't already. Um, anyways, I have to jump off here. I got another thing coming up tonight. If you're in Columbus and you're on this, we'll be speaking at the free meetup tonight. Make sure you guys are there. Thanks, guys.